Hi, this is Paint Girly with Time to Be Creative, and today I'm going to record a dry brush project. One of my subscribers has suggested and asked that I do another dry brushing video. And so for Jane, this is for you. I haven't done this in a long time, and I don't have too much ceramic pieces sitting around anymore, but I did find a couple of things that I didn't finish up, and so I'm going to show you some of my older ceramic pieces, and then we'll get into the project. I'm not sure how much we'll accomplish in this video. We may need to go to two different videos, and I'm just going to show you what I would do if I were dry brushing a ceramic piece. And so years ago, these were very popular for me. I'm a crafter and artisan, and I would do craft shows, and my ceramic pieces, that's where I started out. I started painting ceramics as a way to get out of the house when my children were young. They're in their 30s now, and it was a night out for me, and one thing led to another, and we ended up buying a kiln, and I had classes there for a while. And anyway, this is one of the pieces that I did, and this was dry brushed. Of course, I don't remember. I think I probably base coated this in a gray, would be my guess. And then I have this little angel. She's dry brushed. And then I started a project for a Thanksgiving scene, but I really never finished it. And so this is my little pilgrim girl. She's in two pieces. You can see some dry brushing. Well, the whole piece is dry brushed. And I'm assuming that I airbrushed a base coat on her. See, she's in two pieces. And that I airbrushed charcoal. And so I found that I didn't do the Indians that go with that set. This set was made by a company called Donna, D-O-N-A. It was very popular back when I was doing ceramics. Gosh, and that had to be the late 80s, because I'm guessing my kids were like maybe 3 or 4 years old at that time. And so I found this in an old box, and I had airbrushed it with a charcoal gray, but I wasn't sure that I could cover the skin very well, so I went ahead this morning and I base coated her hair in black, just in an acrylic black paint. I used my Deco Art acrylic paint. Now these pieces are what are called bisque, so they've already been cleaned and fired, and so then you can go ahead and paint on them. You can either glaze them or you can paint with acrylic paints. And this technique is done with acrylic paints. And it's called dry brush because you use your brush dry, which goes against mostly what you were taught. Oh, I see I missed a little bit of black here. And then I went back in and I base coated her face and her hands in the charcoal, and then her headband and her feather. Like I said, I haven't done this in a long while, but I see this little spot of her hair there that I didn't get the black on her little pigtails. And that really would be fine, but if I want to dry brush evenly and get good coverage and have everything come out the same, I want the base coat to be the same. So I was a little sloppy with my gray, my charcoal gray. And the reason I did charcoal gray is on the flesh and a couple of the other spots is because I'm going to be using flesh tones and lighter colors, and I wanted there to be some differentiation once I dry brush. And to be quite honest with you, I haven't dry brushed in quite a few years, so I'm not sure how it'll go. Alright, so I'm just touching up my black area for her hair where I missed with the gray. Now the thing with dry brushing is you use a dirty brush. I mean, it starts out clean, but you layer your colors and you're just putting thin films of paint on top of paint, and you use your brush from one color to the next, at least I do. And so I start out with my lighter colors first and then go to my darker colors. Now my plan for this little gal here is for her to have more of a bronze sun kind of kissed skin, and I'm going to highlight her hair with probably darker browns and then some lighter browns. And I'm going to do the headband, I think, in 2 different colors of turquoise. And the trim on her outfit, I probably will do the same. And then maybe her outfit, I might do some kind of a buckskin kind of color. And the feather, I think I'm just going to do pretty much white. So that's the plan. Now, dry brushing, you use these white-haired, stiff-bristled brushes, although I do like some flexibility in the brush that I use. But you don't want, you don't really want this kind of a brush, you know, that you would normally use to paint acrylics with. And then you're going to need some kind of a surface to clean this brush off on. You're going to dip it into the paint. You can see I'm having a problem here with my paint. I'll tell you about that in a minute. You can use really, I could use this cardboard. You can use a paper bag, paper toweling. I'm going to probably use this cardboard and some paper toweling today. And you start with your lighter color first. So I'm going to do the skin areas first with a light flesh color, and I just have my old stash of acrylic paints from years ago when I was painting ceramics and then moved into wood painting. So this is just I use either folk art or Americana. So this is what I have in the way of light flesh, and I'm not sure if this is auto-focusing like it's supposed to. But anyway, the color is called light flesh. And then I am going to switch to a flesh tone, which is Americana brand. Look, you can see how old this is. My label's all crackled and split. And then I'm planning to maybe do some shading with a shading flesh color, also of Americana. And then I put out a little bit of Tangelo orange from Americana that I might add to her cheek or lip color if we get that far along. Now when I put out the shading flesh color, I couldn't get this to mix very well. I have some issues with my hands and my wrists, and I couldn't shake it well enough, and I don't know if you can really see, but I couldn't get it mixed very well, and so it's all lumpy, and then it ran into my light colored flesh. So I may have to why don't I just do that? It's just a little bit. You really don't need a whole lot, especially for a small project like a little face or a pair of hands. So I'm just going to put out a little more of the light so I don't get that contaminated. I don't want the dark shading flesh in my first coat. And the idea is light coats of paint you can always add, you can't really take it off. That being said, if you would mess up when you first get started, you could go back over and repaint your base coat. The darker color you start with, you're going to see more of a contrast when you dry brush your colors on. A surface that has texture in it is much easier to dry brush than a smooth skin surface. So the flesh areas can be a little fiddly. Like this feather, you know, will be a lot easier. The headband somewhat, because you've got that little design in there. The hair shouldn't be too difficult. I'm going to start on her hands and see how that goes, and see if I can get my mojo back. Like I said, I haven't done this in a while. So again, you're going to start with a dry brush. And this is a Grumbacher number 4. It's kind of large for her face surface, but I don't have much in the way of this type of brush anymore, because I really don't do this kind of work too much anymore. And you know, this one's really large, so I won't be using that. I thought I did have a smaller one. We'll have to see as we go along. Oh, here it is. I think this is it. Yeah, look at that bad boy. So this might be a little better once I want to get into some closer areas. So we're going to keep that aside. And then I did have at one point a really tiny one to do lips and whatnot, but we might have to paint those lips on. Or maybe some do what I say, don't do as I do moments here as we work. So let's get started. So I'm going to go into the lightest flesh color I have, and I'm just using a little glass dish that I put my paints out in. You can use anything, really. Tin foil. I used tin foil for many years to put out as a paint palette. So you're just going to put a little bit on the tip of your brush, and then you're going to rub most of that color out and onto your paper towel. And all you're going to do is just lightly skim the surface of the area that you're wanting to color or paint. And it's just a light back and forth stroke. And we're just kind of setting the base. And you can see there, I missed a little bit of my gray. So I'm going to go back in there with a little bit of charcoal gray, because that white bisque underneath, you know, because it was all white like this, is really stark, and we would have a hard time covering that up with the flesh. So I'm just going to go in there and tap that. And then just give that a couple of seconds to dry. So then as you're working and you're dry brushing and you notice that your brush is starting to not have too much paint left on it, you're going to reapply a little bit of flesh. You're going to work most of that off. And now it's especially important to take your time in very flat areas so you can get a smooth surface. And this is going to take quite a few coats, because I base coated her with charcoal because I wanted it to match the piece that I've already done. Now I have a dog figure, I should show you that I found in my old stash. Let me grab him. I had done some Easter things years ago and didn't want them as dark, so I didn't base coat them in black and charcoal, but I base coated them in a flesh color. So that's what I did with this dog. And then the plan was to come back in with a light, you know, a brown, and then lighten it up and go from there. So you really can base coat it in whatever color you want and whatever your project might warrant. To be very honest with you, I'm really not up on what's popular these days in the world of ceramics and bisque ceramics. But this is a lot like coloring. This is not for someone who's in a hurry and wants to get the project done. This takes time to build up that color to get to what you want. And it's a preference, you know. Everybody's going to see a project a little differently than someone else. And now I'm getting a little heavier handed there. So you have to be careful. And when you're putting on, acrylic paint dries fairly quickly anyways, but when you are doing a thin coat like we're doing here, it dries, you know, fairly quickly, but you do have to be careful because you can, if the paint is not dry, you can wipe it right back off. Then you really kind of have a mess. And it's difficult sometimes to get into these little spots. Of course, it depends too on how anal you are. I tend to be somewhat anal. Shocker! Now, if I knew how my camera really worked and I was an expert on recording, I probably would... Well, maybe I can speed this up after the fact. Instead of you watching me dry brush and letting paint dry. I don't really know how to do that yet. I just wanted to get another video uploaded. I have two YouTube accounts. One is Paint Girly, PaintGirlee, and then I have the Time to Be Creative account. Of course, at the time I made two different accounts, it kind of made sense to me, but now it's like, really, Laura? So I'm trying to upload my videos to both accounts. So that my subscribers can find me. Now don't be too concerned about this. I've kind of slopped over there. I can always go back over that with charcoal, or I can just dry brush my other color right on top. And so I'm just continuing. And it is much easier to do it if you have a really nice flexible brush. This brush is not the best. And I just decided to do the video, and I don't really have, you know, what I should have to show you. I should have a better brush. So once you get this looking the way you want for this first coat, then you would switch to your second coat. Now I'm just trying to base this with this light flesh color, and she's still looking quite dark because of the gray base coat. And this is not going to look, if you're looking for a very smooth finish, and she looks more flesh in real life than she does on the camera. But if you're looking for a real smooth finish, dry brushing is not the technique for you. just go ahead and paint her face flash and do your thing. This is not going to look like a regular ceramic piece that was painted. This definitely has a definite look to it and kind of characteristics. So I think for me, she's probably pretty good there. And I'm going to switch off to my second color, which was the Americana Flesh Tone, which I have on my little palette here. I'm not going to wet my brush. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to tap into that darker flesh color. I'm going to work it out on my paper towel or whatever you're using to clean and rub your brush off on. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to start with her hands again. Now, as I've gotten more into coloring and more into shading, I'm kind of thinking about things like that I didn't really think about years ago when I was dry brushing. So I'm going to try to keep the darker part as I'm shading and adding color towards her clothing so that her fingers are lighter on the outside. On the tips. So again, I'm going to start out, because when I first start out, I've got more color on my brush closer to her clothes, and then I'm going to dry brush up towards her fingertips. And don't forget that underneath part. Real light strokes, and if you do color, you know that you need to layer. If you're coloring with color pencil, you need to layer a lot of layers of color. Now I'm going to start under her chin. I'm doing the same thing. I'm just cleaning my brush off, tapping it in that second flesh tone color. And just adding layers. Now once we get to the hair, I probably should check my time too, because I don't want the video to be too terribly long. Once you get the surface the way that you want it and the coverage that you want, then you can go in and add maybe some shading and some details. I'm going to try to just work on one side of her face here. I don't want the video to be too terribly long and bore you. But you can see my lighting is terrible. I don't know if you can see her skin is starting to smooth out a little bit. And you want to make sure you leave, see the darkness in the cracks of her fingers. You want to leave that kind of stuff because that's why you're doing this, really. So you can see that contrast. Now on a piece like this, you really could paint her face flesh and do it that way, and then dry brush the rest of the project. Just because you do one area dry brush doesn't mean you have to do the whole piece that way. Looks like I'm getting some of my paper towel rubbing too much in the same area, I think. And I'm losing bristles. Sometimes I forget what color I'm using, and I go to dip in and I dip into the wrong color. So try to be aware of where you're putting your paintbrush, because if you're not looking, and then you pick up a different color and you end up dry brushing into her cheek, and you're not ready for that orange yet. It would not be good. So I'm kind of just going in. I wonder if I can maybe zoom this in a little bit more. If that's a little better. I have to work on my lighting with my videos, I think. See, I have a shadow too. I'm not sure how to get rid of that. I'm a work in progress, kids, a work in progress. All right, I think I'm going to combine a little bit of the light with a little bit of that second color. Now I was planning on using this shading flesh around the outside of her, where the hair meets her her face, her hairline meets her face. And I want her to kind of look like she's been out in the sun picking corn. But that shading color is quite dark, so I'm mixing that with maybe a little bit of the light for the second tone. And again, I want to keep the tips of her fingers a little lighter. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. And I'm just putting this shading flesh more around the headband and then along this hairline. Now I can come back in and darken that up with black again when we're ready to do the hair. I'm not too worried about being too fiddly around her hairline there, because I'm going to come back in there. Now when I do the hair and dry brush the hair, I have to be a little more careful. And you can blend all kinds of colors on your brush. Just want to make sure the brush is on the drier side and not real wet, thus dry brushing. Now I do want to add a little bit of color to her cheek, a little blushed color. Make it under her chin a little better. I don't know if I'm trying to remember to hold it up so you can really see. I want the tip of her nose to be a little lighter. And And so I put out this here Tangelo orange. I'm going to tap into that a little bit. And then I'm going to rub that out to the color that I like. And then apply that and give her a little bit of a blush kind of a look on her cheek. And then if it's not the way you like it, you can come back in with another little dab of the lighter color. That'll lighten up what you have on your brush. Boy, I'm really struggling here with the lights. I don't know if I'm making it worse or making it better. I'm thinking I'm making it worse. I don't know if you can really see that. Now if I wanted to, I could come in even with a darker color around here. Say like, let's see. I have a Folk Art red clay. Not sure. Well, that might work. Just add a little more depth to the side of her face. Of course, this one's got the nozzle clogged. So this is where I say, don't do as I do, do as I say. Don't do this. Don't take your brush and dip it into your lid, but the nozzle is clogged and I don't want to mess around with that while I'm trying to record and not take up a lot of your time. Now you want to be careful with your darker color. Sorry, I wasn't in camera there, I don't think. Okay. Now I'm going to mix in some more of that second flesh color. Come back over. Now she's looking really sun-kissed. So I'm going to come back in with that second color. And I'm going to lighten her up a little bit. It's hard to tell too when you don't have the eye in. But if I put the eye in too soon, then I'd have to really be careful with my dry brushing. I think that might be good. She is looking quite red. But if I'm thinking about pilgrims and the first Thanksgiving and crops being harvested in the fall sun, I think that's kind of how I want her. It's going to make a big difference. I should have put out some white. It's going to make a big difference when we get an eye in here. Let me just put the white of the eye in. Now her skin is textured, because like I said, with the dry brushing, you're not going to get that smooth surface like if you just painted your piece. And let's see, I need to find, this will work. Now I'm using a regular hair paintbrush, not those bristles. So I'm going to, this is really small, so I'm going to wet this one first because I don't want paint in a dry hairbrush. I'm going to base coat her eye in. This may not look any better or not, but I think it will make her her skin pop a little bit. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to use this black that I had out and clean up a little bit where I overshot on my dry brushing here. And I'll finish her other side of her face. And I'll probably do a little short video on how I do the eyes. I think this is probably, yeah. So I'm coming back in here and just tidying up around her face. I was really hoping the phone wouldn't ring while I was recording, but so much for that.
Call from Anonymous.
I do apologize.
Call from Anonymous.
Now the dogs are going to start wailing. Okay, so I'm just tidying up where my dry brushing kind of got out of control. Now I basically want her hair black, but I want some of the to be highlighted. And this feather here, I want that to be white, but I want to build that color up. I don't want to put the white right on there because then I think I'll have a more difficult time doing that. So I'm going to switch to a different dry brush. I don't have too many options here. And I'm just going to use up some of this flesh that I put out. And I'm just very lightly, not going with the grain of the feather, I'm going across the grain of the feather, and I'm just adding some of that flesh tone to take away the starkness of that charcoal gray that I put in there. Don't forget to do the back. Again, across the grain. You're just trying to catch that paint on the top, not down in the grooves. I'm not scrubbing, because I don't want full coverage. And like I said, I always start with my lighter color first and then go to the darker. I start with the darkest color. I said that opposite. Darkest color first and then go to the lighter. So all I'm really going to do, and I might eventually put a little bit of turquoise in the feather as well, but for right now I'm just going to do this, the flesh, and then I'm going to add white. And so I'm kind of working that brush in the flesh and the white. Make sure it's dry. And then we're just going to tip that a little bit. Now, if I had gone to the craft store in between wanting to do this video and now, I would have picked up a smaller dry brush so that I can get in those smaller areas. But for anyone that knows me, I have a hard time waiting to do things. I get an idea and I just want to do it. So I'm just working with what I have at home. And there I got a little too heavy. See, this is what you don't want. I kind of used a little more pressure there than what I wanted to do. Gosh, I hope that's not showing up in my video. Okay, and now I'm going to go right to the white, solid white, work that out on my brush, and I'm going to go back to those same areas and just tip the edges of the feather. And the same old thing. This is, you know, a handmade, hand-painted piece. It's not going to be like a factory-made product. It's not going to look like that. It's not really what we're going for. If you wanted something that looked like it was made in a factory, you just would go buy it. But, so don't be too hard on yourself. See, that looks, to me that looks cool. Alright, so that's the feather. And of course, again, I got some white on my black where I want my hair. This is still drying a little bit. So now I'm going to pick out a dark brown to start with my hair. And I wasn't really planning on doing this. I was going to do this separate, but maybe we'll just do a little bit of the hair. So my camera's probably shaking because I have my camera hanging above me, and I have it sitting on my paint wheel where I have all my paint stored. So I'm going to try a dark brown, a dark chocolate. It's not the deepest color, of course, but we have the black. I want a lot of that black to stay put. Now I'm going to go back to my first dry brush that I used because, like I said, I don't have too many options here. And so I'm going to put that dark brown in. Let me see. I'm not really in camera for you here. I tip the brush in that dark chocolate. And that's an Americana color. And I'm trying to work out most of that flesh color that I have. Of course, I could also put a little bit of black in there. And the same thing, I don't want to do the dry brushing the direction of the hair. I want to do it across. Now, you're not going to see a whole lot of difference here because it's dark on dark. but you can see a little bit. I'm going to do the bottom, do her little ponytails. And go across. Now this is a bigger area so you can see it a little better. Just taking light strokes, and you're just putting a light film of color just catching the top of those little hair grooves, if you will. Tresses of hair. You want to make sure you get down under there. And then when it looks like you're not adding any more color, you're going to dip your brush back into your paint. Light strokes. Make sure you get enough off. Like I said at the beginning of the video, you can always add color, can't take color off. Now you can go over color, but it's a lot less of a headache if you just take your time and add just light layers of color. Now this is where I would normally come in with a smaller brush. Now I'm going to kind of go up and down there because I want to get towards her face, but I don't want to get it on her face because I don't want to, trying to see if you can, I don't want to get any on that flesh that we worked so hard to get the way we wanted it. So now I'm doing the top of her head. And then you would just layer on whatever colors you think you want. Maybe you want your Indian to have very light hair. You make it, it's your piece. Make it whatever way you want. Use whatever color combos that you want. Now it looks like I'm brushing much heavier than I am, but I'm just using a very light stroke, and I'm just catching the top of those hair, tresses of hair. Now see there, I got a little bit lighter. Now I could go back into the flesh and use that to lighten up, but that's really kind of light. But I'm not sure I'm going to be able to grab another light color out of my stash here without making my camera shake. This is a light cinnamon by Deco Art Americana. So I'm going to put a little bit of that in. And then I probably will finish up with a little bit of the flesh. This is more of a reddish brown kind of a tone. So it kind of works with the coloring that we have going here. So, I'm always twirling my piece around. I hope that's not making it too difficult for you to see what I'm doing. So this is the top of her head. And now I'm adding a little bit of that, what did I call it? Cinnamon? Light cinnamon. And you don't have to do this all over her head. You could do this in different spots. Like I have this lighter spot going here. So I want to keep making that a little bit lighter. Could be like where the sun's hitting her. And you could maybe, if you're working on a piece and you want the hair to be really dark, you may only want to do one color on top to pick up the texture in the hair. And put some on her ponytails. And I'm just dragging my brush very lightly across the texture, not with the texture, but across the texture. I lose track of time. I'm trying to determine how long I've been working on this. This is probably all I'm going to do for today, because with only having really the two brushes, I want to do this in turquoise blue, and I kind of would have to work kind of hard. If I put turquoise blue on my brown brush, I could work it out, but it might still have like a muddy kind of a look to it. So what I need to do is wash my brushes with mild dish soap and then let them dry completely, and then I can do the second part of this video for you. Now I'm going to go into the second shade and a little bit of my light cinnamon, second shade of the flesh, and a little bit of my light cinnamon, and I'm just going to hit this in a couple little spots. Give it a little bit of a highlight kind of a look. Just wherever you think, you know, the sun would catch her. There's a little spot back here, trying to build up some of the light. And I think for the hair, like a lot of times I would finish off with some white, but I think because I want her hair to remain dark, I'm not going to do the white, but I will come back in and just use the straight second flesh color and hit a couple of those spots that I'm working to lighten up a little bit. Well, that's pretty much it, I think, for today. I'll finish up the other side of her face. And I'll clean my brushes, and then with the second video I probably will also do her, I might do her little shirt here with that cinnamon. And then I want to do 2 shades of turquoise, if I have the paint, in her headband. So we'll do that on the next video. And then we'll do her lips and do her eyes, I think, and her eyebrow. Well, I might do her eyebrows before I come back on camera. So I think that's it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those for me. I haven't been getting notices, so I'm trying to be better at checking for those. I'm not sure why I'm not getting the notices. I have to look into that as well. But thanks for joining me today. I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.